So with our handsome Mr. W, we were going to be touching base on going to a spot and targeting the mat. I did bring out a lovely chew item for him as well that I did stuff with a couple of the training treats. The reason I sometimes like to pair a positive sort of chew item with going to a place and starting to practice going and relaxing is that a lot of times puppies, when they don't have something to chew on, they may chew on things that are inappropriate. So what I mean by that is a lot of times I know his caregiver has mentioned that he has broken several beds. So a lot of times, remember, for young puppies and even brand new adoptions or even adult dogs or adolescents, at time there is a bit of a learning moment where they have to figure out bedding is not the same as a chew item or a play toy. For a lot of puppies, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm getting over a little cold and I have a little tickle. So for Mr. W right now, giving him a chew item and then practicing going to the target mat is now creating that the item, for example, the blanket, doesn't become the chew product. For a lot of puppies, remember that bedding can very much so look like the materials that a lot of their dog toys are made out of. So like the plushy little squeaky guys that are sort of fuzzy feeling, a lot of bedding tends to also be that sort of fleecy or fuzzy feel. If you're going to be practicing going to a target mat or a bed or some sort of item, I'd recommend to pick something that doesn't have extra plush to it for now. So right now I just have a very simple fleece blanket, and you can start to use this when you're ready to practice and then take it away when you're no longer using it or practicing together. A lot of times when puppies are able to figure out their world, they do tend to explore through their mouth, which tends to equal a lot of things either get chewed on or broken, and at times sadly ingested, and that can be problematic. So for right now, Mr. W is working really hard trying to get some of those snacks out of the bone. So if, let's say, he's been doing a real nice job, sir, working on the chew item, we might even take it away for a moment, which also brings up, I know we've mentioned sort of the exchange game, and that one can be with toys, but it can also be with chew items, is I would highly recommend to get your puppy to think that you coming near does not always equal the end of fun. So I know with a lot of puppies, when they have items they're allowed to have and you're trying to take them away, that can cause conflict in general, but especially if we tend to be the end of fun and always grabbing things they shouldn't have. So I know we don't want our puppies to ingest things that could become a foreign body or an obstruction issue or something that's dangerous or toxic, but a lot of times the way we deal with it makes the behaviors worse. So if, let's say, for example, I know this is an item he's allowed to have, we would want to practice with things he can have to work on to learn that letting go of something has value and it isn't too threatening. So if, let's say, for example, your puppy was busy chewing on something, you would want to go ahead. So obviously right now he took a little break, but I'm going to toss a few snacks inside of it. So let's say, for example, your puppy's chewing on an appropriate item, a toy, something you've deemed okay for them to have. Then what you might go and do is do a little positive interrupter and have them practice going away from the original item to either go do a find it with some snacks you tossed off to the side, or you could go ahead and if, let's say, you had multiple toys, you could then, again, like we mentioned with the toy exchange game, is have one toy come alive, he's playing with that one, then you have another toy come alive and he plays with that one after. So that way you can kind of work your dog or your puppy and have them practice bouncing from one item to another. And it isn't always equal that you swipe the thing. So we might get a little sip from him. Beautiful job, sir. You'll see that I am also still doing some find its just in general while I'm sometimes blabbing. And the reason behind that is for a lot of puppies, being stationary is really hard. So I like to sometimes, when they're having a harder time, is work a bit with movement behaviors, which we've discussed in a few different videos as well. So, but let's say I wanted to take this item. I'm going to go ahead and maybe to keep him a little extra busy in the beginning, before my puppy really knows how to let go of something or drop it and doesn't find it overwhelming, I like to go right into doing a little find it, pick up the item he has taken a break from, and then put it off to the side. So now it's out of range. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to try and, yes, nice job, work a bit with our bed or target moment. So let's say for Mr. Handsome, nice job. Yes. Right now he's just trying to find the rest of the crumbs he may have lost. So this could be, again, bed, place, mat, whatever you'd like it to be. In the beginning, I like to just get them comfortable, again, like I've mentioned prior, is get them to feel safe going and targeting the bed or the blanket. and get them cozy with just putting parts of their bodies on there. As your puppy becomes more fluid with going to the target bed, that's a nice sit, sir. Very good. And two, you'll notice that throughout the practice, I am also capturing moments where he's doing well and feeding for that. So we might go again, bed, nice. And that he's like, but I drive by. So right here, yes, and feed. So if he's kind of fast to go by and you miss out on a moment, not the end of the world. Ready? So I'm going to see if I can get his attention. We're going to see if we can lure him into a little sit. He's like, lady, this is very peculiar standing on a weird mat. If your puppies do find target training to be a little bit weird, obviously coming here where everything is novel and I'm the new person and this is not their typical home, it could be a little bit of getting just comfortable with all this novelty. So sometimes if, again, he's a little bit uncertain, I just take my time with him and get him to feel a little bit more comfortable trying it. So notice how he's almost walking around the mat. He might be thinking at times, I know it sounds silly from our perspective, sometimes the puppies think they might fall through or there's something underneath the blanket. So getting them comfortable with at least just physically touching it here and there is a great option. He's just running to grab a little drink, I think. Ready? Good job. So we'll bring him again onto the mat right there. Yes. So I'm going to see if I can get him to, I know the mat gets a little bit wiggly, see if we can get him to do a little bit of stationary on the mat right here. So we'll maybe see if we can get a little sit. Gorgeous. So even if, again, in the beginning, it's just a couple little body parts, so like the front feet versus the full body is on the target, I'm still going to feed for the beginning stages of this behavior. Eventually, we'd want to turn this into our lovely stay behavior, which is, again, where your puppy would be stationary on the mat. Yes. So now if, let's say, we were going to implement a little bit with stay, let's say the mat itself is a little bit stressful for him because he's never done target training, you know, here or with mom, I think, usually. So let's say, for example, we are going to work a bit with stay. Think about stay as almost like freeze tag with room service. So I like to have a distinct stay and a distinct wait behavior. So stay is going to be stay there until I come to get you. If he really finds the blanket to be peculiar, you can do stay behaviors anywhere. So don't feel they have to be on a target. So if, let's say, you have been using stay as a go to your spot and settle, you can still use stay anywhere else in other environments and you don't have to bring a target with you. So if, let's say, we were going to start off with some stays, just stationary here as opposed to on the mat, I would go ahead and tell Mr. W to stay. If, let's say, he's like, hold on, lady, I heard a funny noise. If I lose him, I'm going to regain his attention, reset him up. I'm going to tell him again to stay. And this time I'm going to keep the in-between moments between the food short and sweet. So a lot of times puppies don't have the greatest attention spans. So I want Mr. W to start building up value and not moving. He's like, your shoe smells delicious. Ready? So right now I'm just feeding him for keeping his bum on the floor and working the sit stay. When I want to go and end it, I'm going to feed him his last snack. I'm going to say all done with some touch if he doesn't dislike touch. And then I get him up and wiggle, but there's no food for being all done with the stay position. That's a very nice little sit again. So what I'm feeding my puppies for, and my adult dogs later, is, again, right now it's rapid fire for being stationary. So the intervals between each snack are nice and short. If my intervals were, for example, 10 to 15 seconds apart or longer, then your puppy's attention span might get lost on something else and they might have a really hard time figuring out what the heck stay means. So let's say he's right in front of me. I'm going to tell him stay. And now I'm going to feed him several snacks while being in a sit stay. So even if he's not using his target mat for now, no big deal. If I lose him or he starts to jump or he starts to wiggle, reapply the sit, tell him once more to stay, and just start from square one. If you find he's really having a rough time with it, short and sweet is better. So like, let's say right now he's done a great job holding it for a few seconds. I'm going to say all done, and then we're going to get up and wiggle. So there are no snacks given for being all done. You guys can pick a distinct word that you prefer. I like all done. Other folks prefer free time, release, all set, whatever makes sense to you guys. Keep it, though, consistent. So if, let's say, Mr. W is a little bit unsure, I'm going to regain his attention, get a little sit, tell him once more to stay. And now, again, you'll see that my time frame is short and sweet between each snack. What I'm also making sure to do is I'm not adding tons of distance. So I know in between, sometimes when I'm blabbing, it does go a little bit longer and then he has a harder time. So remember that jumping from his perspective is his anxiety kind of bubbling over, and he doesn't quite know what to do. So when he feels a little bit unsure, he starts to do some jumping. So again, right here, we're feeding, and I typically would be going yes and feeding throughout my stay with marking the stationary. If he wiggles, I'm going to regain that little sit, but I'm going to sort of let him slide off, bring him back over, sit, and then tell him to stay. And now I'm again going to feed him throughout some of the stay. Nice. If again he can only handle a couple little reps, right here on the third snack, I'm going to go ahead and say all done. And we might even add some touch if he doesn't dislike, like I mentioned earlier, and then he can get up and wiggle. So with stay, view it like freeze tag with room service. I'm just going to do a couple find its in the little blanket. So the benefit of doing some stays is that for a lot of puppies, they're almost like the sharks that have to keep swimming to keep alive so that the gills get the water and then the oxygen through it. So for some puppies, being stationary, the only time they actually end up doing it is when they're unconscious. The problem with that is then when your puppy's awake, they tend to be really rambunctious and they almost get so overtired or so overstimulated that then they and you may start to have a hard time. So I like to make it where a lot of times practice settling is just as valuable as some of those movement behaviors, because for most puppies, if they haven't learned how to take little breaks, they're not going to get any better into adolescence when things get a little bit harder. So remember, think about feeding as well for behavior, not always a skill set. So when your puppy is relaxed and sort of chilling, you might go toss a snack at them and reinforce the fact that being relaxed has value. So by getting your puppy to do some of these stationary positions, really beneficial, and the stay can be another way to build value in being stationary. So I think about stay as in freeze tag with room service. You're feeding throughout the stay, not for ending it. You are also not including a recall, because the recall is the slogan that I would use to end either a wait or just simply using a recall from the environment to get my dog to come with me and come to me. So stay is statue stay or statue stay for safety. So your puppy is learning that being stuck is the benefit of the stay. So no food for leaving the stay, no food for ending the stay, only while we're in the stay do they get fed. And this helps, again, build up that value in being stationary is what we're looking for. So sometimes he gives me these beautiful little check-ins. I want to feed him for any good effort, because remember, if you miss out on little windows where he's giving you little glimmers of the behaviors you'd like down the road to become habits, we have to reinforce them to make them something that's going to happen again in the future. So he did a really nice job with some of the beginnings of stay. Great job, sir. So we'll give him a little break from this, and then we'll work a couple other skills.